Welcome back to the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today's guest is Mike Hummel. Thanks for joining the show, Mike.
Man, for sure. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
Mike Hummel is the founder of 1% Labs, which is a sports fuel company built to help athletes stay sharp and perform deeper into practices, training sessions, and competition. Mike is a former 7-time school record holder at Texas A&M and has spent more than 20 years coaching elite endurance athletes. That experience led him to launch MPG, which is their flagship product at 1% Labs, a clean sports fuel gummy designed to maintain focus, energy, and performance without artificial ingredients or caffeine. And in a short amount of time, MPG has already raised close to 1 million while building traction through grassroots tournament activations, club sport partnerships, and direct athlete feedback. So again, Mike, welcome to the show. Tell us more about your background and how you ended up here.
Man, again, that's super pumped to be here. So I don't know any entrepreneur that doesn't love talking about what they're bringing to life. So yeah, my background is, as you noted, in the endurance space, and the endurance community knows really well that if you don't take in fuel and carbs after an hour, things get wonky. In some capacity, things get a little dicey. And so where I saw this show up more recently, and really the reason for launching this is I've shifted my career. I'm old now, and shifted into coaching more formally. And so being able to help some of these younger triathletes, and I saw them in the pool after an hour kind of getting sloppy. The swimming is such a inefficient sport that you have to stay sharp mentally in order to swim effectively. And it hit me that, man, these athletes are, I know we go for a long run, a long bike, they need fuel, but it hasn't found its way into swim. And then it hit me, it actually hadn't found its way into any club sport, soccer, lacrosse, basketball. And so I just started thinking, man, let's call a bunch of my buddies. So just, hey, what do you normally send your kids to practice with? What do you normally send your kids to a tournament with? And the answer was water, like, maybe a little hydration powder or something. It was a resounding nothing. And then they'll swing by Chick-fil-A on the way home, but those kids will go to 2-hour practices with nothing at all, no fuel whatsoever. And so that really just kind of gave the idea, man, I want to take what I know from the endurance community and gift it to club sport. Club sports become so freaking competitive that marginal gains are so important. And parents are spending thousands of dollars on this to get Johnny a scholarship. And I'm not belittling the pursuit. I just mean they're investing heavily on time, their vacation, their dollars to see improvement. And it's so clinically documented. It's hundreds of studies on PubMed. Any of your members and audiences can look that up. But the impact of carbohydrates specifically on adolescents and youth athletes. But it's true all the way up through professional level, but especially adolescents. So anyway, spent a few months kind of getting this thing formulated. The taste was going to be key for this thing to have legs because I've got 5 of my own kids, and I know that now I've got one kid that'll take kale if it makes him a monster, but the other 4 are like, that's great. I'll just be okay being mediocre. So the taste was pretty clutch. So anyway, I could ramble on it more, but that was the heart and the genesis for this, and it's been a really fun journey so far. I've only had product on the market for about 12 weeks now, so it's very very early in our journey.
It's been cool hearing about how you got to this point, and I can't believe it's already been 12 weeks since you've been live. But
Yeah.
you've spent decades coaching athletes before launching MPG. So can you talk about what specific moment made you realize that this was a real business opportunity and not just an observation that you had while you were coaching?
Yeah, it's a collision of 2 things. So, yes, I have coached endurance, but I've been in startups my whole life. So I've been in tech startups. I've put in 10 or 12 different tech startups, and I have had a couple of executive roles and have intentionally pulled out of those in order to coach more. Coaching's never been able to. I coached track you there in Dallas for a little bit, but realized quickly that's not going to provide for a family in a meaningful way, or I'm going to be on the road all of the time. And so, to answer your question, I've just watched founders make bad bets a lot of times with how they, and I was like, man, I don't want that. So I'm gonna stay in an individual contributor type of role, stay in sales, and then be able to coach on the side. So I've watched the founding movement, and I've always had that itch, but I've never really seen a pathway for a product to kind of launch. And I never really thought about CPG, frankly. It was 2 things though on the coaching front. One was, like I mentioned, the pool deck, and it was I watched, I've got a little bottle of water here. I watched some kids kind of they'd mixed in some powder that had some carbs and electrolytes, something I was already encouraging them to take. And they were drinking like this much of it, which is an inadequate dose essentially, because it just kind of jostled their stomach. And that has an impact on the athletes feeling like they want to do the work. And so much of adolescent sport is wanting to do the work, not just actually doing it, because they're emotionally durable, physically durable, et cetera. So I'm like, hey, it's not a minimally viable dose. We got to get some more carbs in your body, or things are still going to stay sloppy. I appreciate your effort. You brought the stuff. So it hit me that I needed a different delivery mechanism, and gummies are just through the roof. I hadn't really researched that the extent of how gummies have fundamentally changed the supplement market. But Gen A and Gen Z have essentially grown the supplement market, which has been static for years by the inclusion with gummies. And you see that with even the Grun's exit recently, but you've seen that with a lot of other products. They're hard to make and it's hard to get electrolytes and carbs into that format, especially make it taste good. But that's why I spent a few months doing it. So that was one aspect of the coaching is I just saw, hey, that's not going to work. I need something that will. The other was a kid that I was coaching. I still am coaching, and it was a lunch with his dad who's like, "Hey, you got to do something. Like you're dynamic, you're different, you're giving life to these kids, but what you're doing in the professional world isn't it's such a different level of passion that isn't carried over to your professional career. Like it's just different. So what can I help you? What can I help give birth to? What can I help you be creative with and be thoughtful around it? I really think it was one of my favorite proverbs in the Bible is like an apt word spoken is like an apple set in gold. And it was like, man, that word kind of landed with me. And I'm like, man, I can do something. I just needed that little bitty nudge. I've been thinking about it for a decade, but I had just had that swim the week before, and then I had this lunch with that dad. And so I was like, man, let me roll my sleeves up. I went out to Colorado for a couple weeks with my wife's blessing and just brainstormed. I almost quit my job on the spot. Actually, I was pretty much done emotionally with that last role, and I was like, dude, we're gonna figure this out. So I came back with this idea, and that was pretty crystallized.
Yeah, this is something I talk about all the time on the podcast, but just having that deep sector understanding and having lived it for over 20 years and as a record holding athlete yourself, it's you obviously know the space inside and out. And that's a big part of what people invest in and how companies get off the ground. And so just to
Mm.
take that one step further, I know with MPG and 1% Labs already raised about $1 million. What have you learned about fundraising, storytelling, and building credibility as an early stage founder in sports and consumer products?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. I've never raised capital, so that's been a really fun journey. I had a little trepidation around it, even though I'm very comfortable with rejection. I've been in sales my whole career because I wanted to go about growing the business differently, and I wasn't racing toward a Series A per se. I'm very open to a Series A. I think this market huge upside, huge upside. I mean, I'm a visionary. I'm a growth guy, but I wanted because of my experience in tech and watching founders chase the next round to stay cash flow, to stay ahead of the burn. I was like, man, I don't want to be in a position to do that. And there's enough margin in this space. And I have enough relationships that I thought I could make a material dent. And so that alone meant that I'm talking with different people. That alone meant that I'm having a conversation with people that are a little bit more patient with their capital, but who also are equally optimistic. It also meant that a lot of my friends come, and I'm in Dallas, are oil and gas guys. This isn't for them. Like their risk profile. Like, so it meant that I had to call some other guys that I thought, hey, I know they have capital. I know they invest all the time, but the CPG is a wild horse to them. And that was another settling part for me. Like, not every good friends saying no and, older, wiser counsel saying no isn't indicative of their trust in me. It's their investing thesis. And so I had to be comfortable with that but the other part is I just, something I've learned in sales is I didn't need to overbake. I spent time building a deck. I spent time being thoughtful around what the story I wanted to tell. I practiced telling the story. And then I started telling the story to as many people as I could. As many people, even before they were investors. And then all of a sudden you start finding, hey, I know a guy you should talk with. That's the kind of thing they get excited about. And capital, I do find this to be true. Capital loves energy. They love energy. They're making a bet on a product. Yes. Could it make a difference in the TAM? Yes. But they're making a bet on the person. And if somebody's listening and they're energetic, they're dynamic, they don't have to be God's gift to speaking, but they have a passion for what they're doing. It is infectious. And you will find that capital is much easier. The other thing I really materially learned is after somebody said yes and they wanted to give me some cash, which was so great. And I was so flattered every single time I've gotten a yes. I'm just so thankful. Hey, but man, do you have any friends like you that would be interested in this? And just asking the same person, it's a referral. And it's funny, that's the way those guys work in a lot of ways. I'm not from that world. Maybe one day I will be where I can help other businesses, seed those guys, but they all that's what they do when they're playing golf. That's what they do when they're hunting. That's when they do when they're hanging out with their friends. That's when they do when they're taking their kids to the games because they're talking about those little types of deals that they bet on. And so that's another thing I think some folks forget is a yes is or even a no. Like I've had no's convert into leads. Man, that's great. I totally respect that decision. I get that that may not fit your thesis. Do you have anybody in your world that might be interested in this? Full stop. Let them simmer on it. And you do have to follow up. I think that was another part. I didn't really realize how many folks just needed to have that door knocked on a third and fourth and fifth time. Oh yeah, sorry, I've been busy. And it isn't offensive to track him down. I would manage expectations. Hey, do you mind if I call you back in a week, 3 days? Is that enough time? Whatever. What else do you need to think about, et cetera? So I think being persistent is another thing I see my buddies that have gone down this road not do because they just feel like I don't want to bug them. I don't want to. Yeah, it's unfortunately raising capital is sales 101 or 201, however you want to think about it. So anyway,
Yeah.
Does that answer the
No,
question?
it does, it does. That's great advice, and I think that's something that a lot of people it's don't always realize. If you just ask for the referral, then a no, like you said, could turn into a yes. So it makes a lot of sense that you've had the success, and just from your sales background, I know, like you said, it's sales 101 or 201. So I appreciate all that, Mike. And one of the things that I found, which was interesting, is your focus on grassroots activations and in-person sampling over paid social. And I know that was a big focus of our first conversation.
Yep.
So what have you learned from being directly in front of the athletes and parents at tournaments and facilities compared to just doing like paid social media ads?
Yeah, I'm really grateful I went about this way, and I'm glad it was kind of in my soul to do this on day one. Just to be clear to those listening, I still believe in paid ads, and I still will do those. I'm raising some more capital right now for that purpose, but the what I have learned has been really eye opening. So one, it's affirmed my thesis. So I talked with 200 or 300 folks before I even brought the product to market. Hey, what do you like I mentioned earlier, what do you send your kids to practice with? What do you send them to tournaments with? And the answer was nothing. It's been affirmed almost to a T. Like I sponsored the North America's largest soccer tournament, the Dallas Cup. I got in front of they have 10,000 soccer athletes. I talked to 1,000 players. Same question. The Americans said nothing. Maybe if our coach gives us a water break. But the Europeans, by contrast, said, well, before practice, we take this. The middle practice, we take this. After practice, we take this. And so you had 20% of the audience at this tournament answering emphatically because they know what we should all know. And Americans, unfortunately, don't generally apply that. So I learned that. I think the other thing, a couple of things that really interested me is parents actually don't care that it's going to help their kids get better, which was, I think they will. But initially, what parents care about is they pick up, like I've got the package right here. Like, oh, let me see what's in it. Okay, Johnny, you can try a sample. Johnny likes the sample. Great, we'll buy some. So they care, is it clean? This is a premium product. It's sitting in a club sport world with parents investing money. So there's a premium feel to it, both the price point as well as what's ingredient wise. So is it clean? Does it resonate with that audience? And do the kids really love the taste? We'll buy it. The other thing that was interesting to me and illuminating was my thesis was parents want Johnny to be better. Great. We'll buy it. I didn't realize carbs were that important. I didn't realize there was a specific amount they needed every hour. Great. We want them to be awesome. We're already spending X number of dollars. We're already traveling X number of weekends. They don't care about that. As I've already mentioned, they locked in on the electrolyte piece. So this has carbs and electrolytes. It has some electrolytes. It doesn't have as much as an element. I mean, just can't cram that much into a gummy. It breaks down compositionally. There's a misunderstanding in the community, not just around carbs, but around electrolytes. So they would fixate on electrolytes. Oh, we need some electrolytes in the body. I'm like, electrolytes are great, but it's like a car. If a car has no gas, it doesn't go anywhere. The electrolytes, though, are like the oil for that car. It keeps the car from overheating. So they'll fixate on the oil, but the gas tank's empty. And I'm like, oh, I love that you want some electrolytes, and I don't want to tell you not to buy this, but I want you to have perspective. And so I think for me, it makes me realize, even though I don't think it's a long conversation around the education piece, I think it means that I have to be consistent with my educational efforts. And that's not going to happen in a one off tournament. The last thing I've learned from this, and again, really grateful for the direct feedback, maybe two more things. People love to support local and they love to support founders. So I've had so many fresh conversations both on dollars and more capital, as well as opportunities to get in specialty retail, which kind of my margins fit right now because of being in front of people. I've got in front of club sport like organizations where they have 50 or 100 teams, wouldn't have had that chance. My kids all dragging me back over here. They told me I got to try this. So I'm going to try it. And we get in a conversation that kind of one thing leads to another. So getting supported as a founder was really great. But the other fun piece of that is like your return on investment is stupid high. Like I can spend $1,000 to sponsor a tournament and generate 5 grand in revenue that weekend and pull down 100 to 200, not just orders, but because those are a little bit transactional and you may not grab all the first party data you want, but I can make a trade for like a sample or a serving size. Hey, I'll give you this if you'll give me your email and phone number. I'd love to keep you in touch about how we're growing, maturing. So now I'm making a trade for, whatever cost of goods, $1.28 for first party data, which is a trade I'll make all day because then I can continue the educational long run and keep them engaged and move them from a one-time purchase or an acute tournament based to a subscription around practice fuel. And that's where the revenue model really makes sense for me. So I know it's a long answer, but I've learned so much and I'm so grateful for that. And it's going to change the way I talk to the market, and for the initial run of paid ads.
Mhm. What I've taken away from what you said is although you're a CPG company, you've obviously learned a lot about not only doing business with on the B2C side of things directly with athletes and families, but it seems like you've also had some success maybe working with tournaments or clubs as well, just by either sponsoring or maybe having better relationships with them. So, and we mentioned this earlier, just that with sports business leaders, a big focus for us is
Mm.
helping entrepreneurs and companies do business with teams, leagues, and properties. So, wanted to see from your experience with 1% Labs, what you've learned about that specifically, doing business
Mm.
with teams and leagues, and what advice you would share with the rest of the audience here.
Yeah, it's great. So there are a couple things. There's some tactical things on the product formulation, like what it takes to get exposed or have even an at bat with a pro team or collegiate team. So I knew from day one I wanted to move into the collegiate market as the upper echelon. I'll move into the pro, but Lord willing, at some point that's just not primary. I want to start collegiate and work my way down. Collegiate validates the youth market, and so all the colleges want is no caffeine and has it been third party tested. And so I made sure from day one that I had that in place. And also, it's kind of what Amazon will need in the future too. But I wanted to make sure the collegiate boxes were checked. Colleges buy this product already, types of this type of product through nutrition departments. So I'm already in procurement process with two or three universities to get this procured by those guys. They have the same challenges that I've already articulated. They buy stuff, their athletes don't take it. It doesn't taste good. And so that's the problem. Just because you have to answer your question maybe more directly, I think sometimes I've talked with other people that say I don't my product's not necessarily unique enough to make a dent in those clubs or teams and leagues. And I'm like, man, I think you got to find where it is unique enough and double down on that because they are a lot of these guys have been approached. The teams and clubs have been approached meaningfully and consistently by a lot of organizations, and they always want something systemic. They always want, hey, let's just go wide, let's go across all the org and let's see what happens. And I think that's a terrible way of pitching yourself on day one. I think you need to pitch pilots, you need to pitch education, you need to pitch like really needs to be a bottom up approach and gain real level conviction because then you're really cementing the why. You can document the why and you can socialize the why. What benefit do the athletes get when they take this? Let me have two teams. Let me arm those teams with that. And so those are the kind of things that you want the big revenue number to pop and all that jazz. I think that's good. You just have to have a little bit longer mindset. And I think it will. I think organizations are slow to move. I think a lot of, at least at the youth level, you have executive directors that are full-time business people that also oversee a team of 60 club organizations. And they're doing a lot and they're fielding a bunch of things and their own kids are often involved. And so they're gone a ton. So you have to be patient. It's a consistent thing of patient. But I think how you approach these organizations ought to be what can I give to them? Not just product, but what can I give to them that's of value and really be thoughtful around that and not just how can I get them to buy the thing that I want them to buy? It sounds so stupid to say it out loud, but like I've just watched my buddies kind of knock on doors and be like, "Hey, I got the thing. You should buy the thing." And I'm like, "Man, that's not the way I'd go about it." I think what it's just again, there's ways of being meaningful. And so I think the other part from this is there are most organizations outside of the pro level, even the collegiate level. So to give you a good example, collegiately, Olympic sports are typically lumped under one nutrition department. Basketball, maybe football's combined. Football generally its own bucket of funding. And so a university saying no doesn't mean the whole university said no. The nutrition department over that one area may have said no. Where else can I find an inroad? And again, you just need that door to be cracked open. It comes back to I don't need the whole org on day one. I need to get some traction in one aspect and be patient with that. And and then you have to stay dogmatic on it. So I know you guys probably track with all this. It's intuitive to me, but it's not always intuitive to my buddies.
Yeah. What I've found too is just that when you add value upfront, people are much more receptive to actually hearing whatever it is that you have to say. And I think the big sticking point for that is that you have to really be genuine. And for somebody like yourself who has that deep understanding, you've lived it for decades, you have the best interest of the end user at the center of the conversation. So it's just much easier for you. And I think that's a
Mm.
lesson that everybody can learn is just to make sure that one, you're genuine, and then two, you're adding value in every single point of contact.
Yeah, I think something small too with and this, I guess, I'm thinking CPG oftentimes is direct to consumer, and right? So you have a business to a person, and it can be more transactional, but you really have to put on the business to business mindset when you're talking with an organization or a larger club, and that's a different mindset. And it's a more professional mindset. It's a more documented mindset. I'm quick to follow up. You want to be the person that rises to the top of the stack to reply to because you're so diligent and you're so excellent at your stuff. And that's a miss from it's been a miss for me in the past too, but like hopefully over time I've refined that where they need to be treated with different weight. Hopefully everybody does, but they need a different level of gravitas.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's also something that we try to focus on is just staying very punctual and getting back to people as soon as possible. And I think
Justin, you did that to
that's
me
great.
when we had our first conversation. I had a very succinct, summarized note within I think 24 hours of our initial convo. So I can give you a tip of the hat to that. So you do that.
Yeah, thanks. So this has been great. What else, any last words that you'd like to share with the sports business leaders audience, either about advice that you've learned or lessons that you think everybody else should hear?
Yeah, I think there's a if I'm just speaking out of my own kind of the last 12 weeks, I've learned a lot, which I knew I would learn a lot. I think to stay really curious the whole process and learn, ask questions of everybody. Everyone's got a slightly different point of view. It's like being a new dad. I'm surprised how many people come out of the woodworks and be like, well, you know how you got to get that kid to sleep at night. And I'm like, no, I'm sure you're about to tell me though. A lot of people have come forward and told me a lot of things. And it's okay to receive all of that and then have a point of view that's different. And it's okay to be engaging with other founders and who have gone about a different business model. A specific thing a lot of folks wanted to immediately run forward with paid ads and not have any of the tournament stuff as an example. I'm like, man, I feel like we can learn a lot and spend a lot less money and gain some proof of concept if we go this route initially. And you know, again, went back to how much money do I want to raise? How quickly do I need to grow? So I think if you have a different thesis or you have you're invested in a community and you know what will move the needle, or you have a belief and you have validated it with some of your buddies and a wise counsel of sorts, it's okay to move forward on that. I think having a wise counsel is the other thing I would say. Having folks that really can tell you're being a tool, can tell you that you're like my wife's one of those folks, and she's like, "Hey, we all knew this would be busy, but I'm getting half of you. When I'm talking to you, you're not engaged." I'm like, "Thank you." And that was 6 7 weeks in, and that's been very sobering. And she's not wrong. I mean, I've been an autopilot in my whole sales career, or a lot of it, because I've been doing it so long, and this has required so much more mental faculty. It's okay, but make sure you take care of your home first. Like there's no I don't care how much money you make or how successful things become. It's flavorless without those that support you still being on board. So make sure you have margin to protect those that are most important.
Yeah, thank you for everything, Mike. This has been awesome learning about your company and yourself just as an entrepreneur. What would be the best way for SBL to learn more about 1% Labs and keep in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my website is MP Gummies. Sorry, MPG is the name of the product, but mpgummies.com. You guys can also drop me an email with the same Mike at mpgummies.com. I can fill you in on where we're doing. And if you're in the Dallas area and are in this community at all, I'd love to connect. I'm always anxious to learn. And I do think there's some cool, my youngest son, or not my youngest, one of my sons is out here with me, and he was asking me about this particular conversation. He said, "Hey, do you think you'd connect with some other people that are like-minded?" I said, "I think I am. I think you just never know where they're going to come from." So yes, I would love to engage, even if you're not in Dallas. But if you're in Dallas, though, count on me reaching out, asking for coffee in person, because that's kind of how I'm wired.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And we've met tons of great people in Dallas. Although we're from Philly, don't really love the football team, still have some great people down there. I do.
We have mixed feelings ourselves on our own Cowboys, so it's great, man.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great evening.